Let's try that again. Welcome to Liam's Library. What a beautiful day on this Saturday morning. How long have I got? I'm about to shut up the bookshop in about 10 minutes. Thought, oh, we've got 10 minutes to go. There's no customers in here. Talk to you about a book, eh? A book I got for Christmas. That's what I normally do, is talk about books. Sorry I haven't been there for a little while. You're probably tuning out, looking for some other Aussie geek to talk about horror novels, but look what I got for Chrissy. Once again, backwards. Full Throttle by Joe Hill. Now, this is the only book I wanted all year. I got The Institute by Stephen King. I'm going to admit, I never finished it. I'm 200 pages in. It's a good book. And all I've been doing is hanging out for Stephen King's Son book to come out. You know? So both their books come out this year. 200 pages into The Institute. It's okay. It's a Stephen King book, that's for sure. Reminds me a bit of Needful Things, just the way the characters are described. And the style of writing, it feels like he wrote it in the 90s. I digress. We're not talking about Needful Things by Stephen King. We're talking about Full Throttle by Joe Hill. Now, I happen to get myself a nice first edition. First edition. And, alright, so let's talk about it. I haven't read this book yet. What I have read is the first 2 stories in it and the intro. Actually, I've also read the last story in it, In the Tall Grass. And if you've been tuning into Netflix, you've all seen that. I'm going to say it's a bit of an abortion of a movie. The story makes a bit more sense than that movie does, but the visuals were cool. You know, the blood and the crows and the soil and the grass. It's pretty full on. So, contained in Full Throttle by Joe Hill is 2 short stories that Joe Hill wrote with his father, Stephen King. The first story is called Throttle with Stephen King. And the second last story is called In the Tall Grass with Stephen King. So 2 opportunities Joe Hill got to write horror stories with his father, you know, the master of horror. And now I've read them both. So In the Tall Grass is unstoppable. It's like Children of the Corn on acid and steroids. But Throttle is an homage to Richard Matheson's story, Duel. I always say it wrong. Steven Spielberg's first movie, anyway, where the truck chases the car all the way through the desert, and they end up in this full cat and mouse thing. And it actually showed us, you know, how good Steven Spielberg was going to be when he kept going. It's good to have a bit of a rant to you guys. I've been keeping away for so long. I don't think I'm going to wait a week to do another one. Alright, so I'm just going to quickly discuss the first story in here, Full Throttle, or Throttle. And then I think I might just give it 2 days, check back in with you, and I'll do the next story, which is called Dark Carousel, which to me is just such an homage to Ray Bradbury's Dark Carnival. Of course it is. It even mentions Cougar and Dark's Carnival. So that'll be next. And I might just even do In the Tall Grass after that. And then we'll just go from story to story. Because I have to let you in on a secret. Stephen King isn't the best horror writer of all time. I mean, we knew that anyway. Peter Straub is. But Joe Hill has come along now. You know, it's not that I'm just like, oh, cool, Joe Hill, you know, Stephen King's son, riding on the hype train. I think he's the greatest horror writer of all time. I never would have expected Joe Hill to overtake Stephen King. And he hasn't. What? It's 11 or 14 years of a career, and he's got 8 books, 1 TV show and 2 movies or something. I reckon back in the day around then with Stephen King, it probably would have been 30 movies, 10 TV shows. Probably, yeah, different kind of options back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But, I digress. The first story in this is called Throttle. Now, it's a father and son who are in a bikie gang, and they're bad. You know, the dad's bad, the son's even worse. They kill people for drug money and all that kind of stuff. And they're out in the desert, and they've just murdered a bunch of people. And they didn't get their money. And now this bikie gang's just fanging it through the desert, you know. And they're all mad. They've got to get to Vegas. They've got to work out how they lost 60 grand. Who's to blame, all that kind of stuff. But then while that's happening, all of a sudden, this big supercharged truck just starts chasing them. And knocking them off their bikes. And splatting them to the 4 winds. And this bikie gang has to try to work out who this truck driver is, what his beef is, and he's going to kill every single one of these members of this bikie gang unless they blow up this truck. And it's just it's a direct homage, of course, to Richard Matheson's Duel. Except it's just a bit more of a fight. You know, you've got a bikie gang versus a trucker, and they're both just evil murderers. But to be honest, I felt the first story, Throttle, really rushed. Maybe that was on purpose. Because, yeah, it did feel really rushed. It was enjoyable. Before I knew it, it was over, and I didn't overly care too much about it. Yeah. So, but you got to give Joe Hill this. His first and last sentences, I swear, you know, it's him learning the subtlety and the power of poetry and prose, you know what I mean, from his dad. But I swear he stole that from like Bradbury or Matheson, or they rode west from the slaughter. How good's that? So straight away, you know a lot of people died east. And you're in for it. And doesn't let up. So that's Throttle, and the Throttle never lets up. Second story, Dark Carousel. Very supernatural. I'll give you the review on Dark Carousel in the next couple of days, but I don't think I'm going to give it too many props. It's a bit silly for Joe Hill to all of a sudden be taking the world by storm and then just write a story about a merry-go-round that comes to life and kills a bunch of horny teenagers. Anyway, that's what the next story's about. You know what? It was good to chat to you. It was good to have a yarn to the people that tune in, which is probably no one. And I'm not going anywhere, so tune in the next couple of days to find out about In the Tall Grass and Dark Carousel. And I think I'll just plot away at this book until it's finished. Awesome. Take care of one another, everybody out there. Read some really good books. And, I don't know, don't take any shit from anyone. Whoop, whoop.